According to research from the Center for Economics and Business Research in London, China will overtake the United States as the world's largest economy by 2032. In 2032, 3 of the 4 largest economies will be Asian: China, India, and Japan, Bloomberg News points out, citing CBR's research. India will pass the United Kingdom and France next year, and will pass Germany by 2027. South Korea and Indonesia will knock G7 nations Italy and Canada out of the top 10 list by 2032. Writing at Bloomberg View in October, Noah Smith argued that China has already surpassed the United States economically and is pulling away. He based this argument on China's superior manufacturing output and the purchasing power parity adjustment, which essentially argues that China's gross domestic product is systematically undercounted because as a developing nation it has much lower prices for many of its goods. Using PPP adjustments, the International Monetary Fund calculated this year that China has replaced the United States as world's largest economy, the first time the United States has been bumped from the top spot since it overtook the United Kingdom in 1872. China's economy is worth $17.6 trillion according to the IMF, while the U.S. is worth $17.4 trillion. Smith suggests the much lower standard of living for China's much larger population is a deficiency it can correct with relative ease, now that it has accumulated such enormous total economic power. Tim Worsthall at Forbes makes the opposite argument, advising Americans and Europeans not to worry too much about statistical legerdemain that paints China as the top world economy in terms of collective output because the individual standard of living is the ultimate measure of economic success. For what determines how well people live, and yes, aiding people in living well is pretty much the point of this whole having an economy thing, is economic output per capita. That total economy divided by the number of people who get to consume the output. Here the U.S. is well ahead, north of $50,000 a year in the U.S., only just over $5,000 a year in China, and yes, that is after adjusting for price differences, and China would need another 3 generations of breakneck growth to close that gap. There are those who worry that economic size equates to political or even military power. And there's something to that, but again not much. For that sort of power depends upon how much you can tax off those people in order to pay for that military power. And clearly, the richer people are the more there is to tax them before you push them back down into subsistence again. If it really came down to it, properly mano a mano, the U.S. could mobilize a much larger portion of its economy for such purposes than a poorer country could. It's entirely true that, on a PPP basis, that is, accounting for price differences, China's economy is now marginally larger than that of the U.S. But it doesn't actually matter very much at all.